Hey everybody, it's Brian with Retired at 40. Duck season is almost here. We've got duck hunting season, we've got Thanksgiving coming up, and then what are the holidays without a little roasted duck? So today we're going to do a roast duck on the Traeger, which will give it a nice smoky flavor, and then we're going to add a homemade orange sauce on top. But first we're going to pick some wild pears to go with it. So a roast duck on the Traeger or a smoker or a grill is really simple, but it will depend on whether you're doing a domestic duck or a wild duck. So I have a domestic duck here today because it's not actually duck season yet. So the first thing you want to do, whether it's wild or domestic, is just take paper towels and you want to get all the moisture off of the skin that you can. And then in the past with certain types of birds, I've also done a brine for this, but a lot of, especially domestic ducks, and if you're doing turkey or chicken or something like that, a lot of times they're already kind of pre-brined in a saline solution. Our first major difference between a domestic and a wild duck is going to be the fat content of the duck. If you're doing a domestic duck, you're going to want to take and you're going to want to poke a lot of holes in the skin. But that's not necessarily going to be the case with a wild duck because they're going to be a lot more lean. And if you use this same exact recipe without the variation I'm going to show you, you're going to end up with a shoe leather duck. You can also take the wingtips off. Sometimes if you buy them in the store, they'll have the wingtips on. This one actually doesn't have it on this side and does have it on this side. So if you want to take the wingtips off, you're basically just going to bend this joint all the way back this way until you hear a pop, and then you're going to take your knife and just go right down the joint with it and they'll come right off. So at this point we can set the bird aside because we're going to cut up some stuff to put in the cavity to add a little bit of extra flavor, and then we're going to season the duck everywhere. You can fill the cavity with all kinds of different stuff. I would highly recommend just a medium-sized onion, and then I'm going to do some fresh basil, and we're just going to dice it all up and we're going to fill the cavity. We're also going to want to quarter one orange, and we obviously don't want the skin on these. At this point we're going to want to flip the duck on its back, and I'm going to move mine to a roasting pan just so it keeps all the stuff in kind of one place. You're going to want to take all the goodies out of the cavity. If this is a domestic bird, you want nothing in the cavity so you have plenty of room to fill it with all this goodness here. And I would recommend just filling the entire thing as full as you can get it. Then we're going to cover this with a seasoning or a rub. And I use my Traeger rub. This is my homemade recipe. If you want this recipe, I'll put a link to the video for this recipe. It's very similar to Traeger's rub. I know Traeger kind of uses a different rub for all different stuff, but this is my go-to rub. I use this on everything. I use it for poultry, I use it for pork, I use it for everything. And then don't forget the back. You want to get the whole thing. And then don't forget to trim this neck fat off. A lot of times there's a lot of extra neck fat on a duck. And I'm just going to go ahead and trim that off. And I almost forgot, there's one more thing you want to do before you put it on the grill. In order to maximize the juiciness of this, you're going to want to tie these legs together. And that's just going to seal that cavity up. Just like that. You can use butcher string or really anything that's kind of like butcher string. And you can also tie the wings back, which I think I'm going to do on mine. So this guy's ready to go on the grill. So we're going to heat our grill up. I'm using a Traeger. I'm going to go up to 225. You want your grill to be approximately 225. Let it come up to heat before you actually put the bird on. So that duck is going to stay on the grill for about 2.5 hours to 3 hours. So we've got plenty of time to get our orange sauce taken care of, and then we're going to use those wild pears that we picked. So while we're waiting for the Traeger to warm up to 225, I want to talk about the difference between a wild duck and a domestic duck and what the difference is when you're going to cook it. Really the most important part of cooking a duck and really any kind of bird is the internal temperature. Your time is always going to vary depending on how accurate your grill is, how well it maintains the temperature, what the weather's like outside, if it's windy or rainy or anything like that. And my Traeger is getting to the point where it's old enough where I can't update it any farther. I've put new temperature controls on it, but I can't get the new tech that the new Traegers have. So what I found to be the next best thing is a Bluetooth thermometer. And this company, Meter, actually sent me this thermometer at the perfect time because I'm gonna need this today. And I've used this thing a handful of times since they sent it to me, and I really like to put things through the ringer before I like promote something. And I actually love this thing so much, I'm gonna do a whole video on it. I think it's the best thing out there for a Bluetooth thermometer. It's super compact, and there's just there's so many pluses to it, but I'm not gonna get too much into it because I'll make a whole separate video, but I will show you how it works. You just need this little stylus pin. This is actually your thermometer, and you'll go into the meat just like you would with a regular probe of any kind. Now I'm gonna put it into the thigh. You really wanna get it into the thickest part of the meat if you can. And then we're gonna go throw this on the grill since it's ready now. All right, so I'm gonna throw the duck on before I get too carried away. I'm gonna do breast down. And this is where things get really cool. So this is where our probe came from, and this actually charges the probe. It's got a magnet on the back. You just stick it, keep it in range of that probe. And then that is going to talk to our phone. You tell it what you're cooking, duck, whole duck. You set the temperature you want it to stop at. And then the meter tells you the internal temperature, your target temperature, the ambient temperature of the grill, and then it'll give you an estimated cook time. And then it'll even alert me if anything needs attention during the cook. And then of course it'll tell you when the cook is done too. I love it. Let's go make some orange sauce. Okay, so the orange sauce is real simple. There's just a handful of ingredients. We're gonna start with 1/3 cup of chicken or vegetable stock. And we're gonna do 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And then we're gonna do a couple of tablespoons of red wine. Obviously I only use the finest box wine there is. And then 1/2 tablespoon of tomato puree. 1/2 tablespoon of pureed ginger. 2 tablespoons of honey. And then the last thing is we just need the juice of 1 orange. We're gonna whisk all those ingredients together, and then we're gonna go into a saucepan with it. And then we're gonna simmer this for just a few minutes until the sauce starts to thicken up. Okay, so our duck has about an hour left, and this is where the wild duck and the domestic duck start to change. So with an hour left, I would go up to 275 for a domestic duck. And then if you're doing a wild duck, I would just leave it at 225. So we're gonna take this orange glaze, we're gonna split it in half, and we're gonna do half on the duck right now, and we're gonna hold half back for when it's time to eat it. But you just wanna cover that skin, and it's gonna get a nice orange glaze, crispy layer over the top. And that looks amazing. So another little tip that you can do if you wanna speed it up, or if you want to get that skin a little bit extra crispier, you can drape it with some aluminum foil just real gently. All right, so we've only got a couple minutes left here. And if the skin is not browned to your liking, you can actually just go up to 375 for 3 to 5 minutes, and that will actually crisp it real quick. All right, this cook is done. We're at 160. We're gonna take the bird off. We're gonna let it rest with some foil over the top of it. And this is gonna be absolutely amazing. And I didn't forget about these pears. So while the duck is resting for 30 minutes or shortly before it's done, you're just gonna wanna cut the top off of these wild pears. You wanna boil them until they're soft, and then you can cut them up from there. And we're gonna take some of that orange glaze and just drizzle it over the pears. It makes a great pairing for a side for the duck or for dessert. Well, that's it for me today. I hope your cook goes as well as mine did. In the meantime, this is Retired at 40. Remember to live life simple. We'll catch you next week.